So I'm going to talk about a typical resume you'll use once you are in the job market. This doesn't reflect that you're using a different resume when you're doing the campus recruiting process is all different. You have an institute-based resume, so you have to follow institute format, right? There's no getting around it. So through this exercise, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is a big picture, use that big picture and try to take away what you want to do during your job search process. Okay, so the big picture is what we are going to discuss today. How you customize your institute resume is up to you. When you're inside a college or institute, you have to work within the rules of the institute. So you have to follow the institute format as much as possible. Okay, so ideally, when I look at a resume, right, when you go to the open job market, if you're looking for off-campus jobs, what we look for is we look at I have maybe 10 seconds I'm going to spend on a resume. So I'll tell you what are the things I'm looking for. Number one, I'm looking for the name at the top, right? It should be clearly visible. That's what I want. Second thing I'm looking for is all the contact details, like their phone number, their email ID, their LinkedIn ID, their address. Like these are the things I'm looking for. And whether you're doing an MS program, MBA program, you're studying in IIMs, go do an MBA from the US, the same rules apply wherever you go. Try to list down your objective. Again, if it's not allowed in institute format, that's fine. But typically, I look for an objective because it reveals two things to me. One is, what does the student want? Is the student looking for a full-time job? Is the student looking for an internship? Are they looking for a co-op? I have no idea. I want to hear from the student what they want. So maybe that helps. The second thing, what will help me is, okay, what is the skill that the student brings to the table? So this student has listed 3 skills. And the critical thing is, does the skill which the student bring to the table match what I am looking for in my job description? So for example, Rohan can say that I am awesome in problem solving, quantitative analysis, and domain knowledge. But maybe the company he's shooting for, it could be, for example, Mahindra and Mahindra, right? They don't care about these things. So Rohan may be an excellent student, may have fantastic skills, but if the skills Rohan has to offer doesn't match what Mahindra and Mahindra is looking for, he will not get through the first stage of the resume shortlisting process. So you have to custom the sense, like you have to write down the stuff what the company is looking for, right? So ideally, Rohan should do some pre-work in terms of trying to understand what do manufacturing companies like Mahindra and Mahindra, Godrej, or Tata Motors, what do they look for? And customize his resume according to the job. I'm looking for things like if you have a good CGPA, which is like 8.5 and above, I think is good. Even 8 and above is good. Below that, it's up to you whether you want to put it on your resume or not. It helps to have a good GPA for sure. And whatever courses you have taken, especially for consulting jobs, for finance jobs, for computer science jobs, your understanding of coursework is also very important. For data analytics jobs, again, important. So if you've done some good coursework, it helps. There are a bunch of students in this group who are from non-computer science branches, and you're also targeting for the jobs in computer science and data analytics. For me, if you're a non-computer science student targeting CS jobs, I want to know what have you done in computer science to target those jobs. So it can be courses you have taken from within your college. It can be Coursera classes, online classes, but list down the courses you have taken. That helps me understand that you're a serious candidate applying for jobs in computer science. Okay, so you list down some of these things there. When you talk about your industrial experience, and I think this is very, very important for companies because I don't want to, like if I'm looking for a full-time hire, I don't want to be a company which is going to experiment with somebody. For example, let's again pick on Rohan. Rohan, no offense to you, but I'm just going to pick on you for the time being. That I don't want Rohan to come to my company and experiment for the first time in his career if he's cut out for a job in computer science. I don't want that. I want a person who's already proven themselves in computer science. So when I read the language of the resume, I get a very good sense of does this person understand what computer science is? Does he understand the job skills? Has he made an impact in the workplace? So I'm already asking these questions. So ideally, when you begin writing a resume, never use the word I did. If you begin with the word I did, I know that you are a novice, you have no idea how to write a resume. High chance that you get rejected right away. Always begin with something called action verb. You always begin with a powerful verb like generated, led, spearheaded. Those are the kind of words you got to be using. So you talk about if you built and generated reports to track engagement, right? So this is the work being done by data analyst folks or business analyst folks. You also add a number to it. This is called a metric. So remember yesterday we talked about when you give a star answer, you always close with the result, which is also a metric. The same way you also introduce a metric into every line or bullet point you put on your resume. Never have a resume bullet point without a metric. So whenever I give this feedback to anyone, right, first thing they come to me is it's impossible. There are a lot of work I've done which cannot have a metric. Okay, so my answer to that is think hard. I've seen probably tens of thousands of resumes so far, and the best resumes are always those bullet points which have a metric linked to it. So the metric can be something like efficiency improvement. It can be productivity improvement. In software, it can be something like the number of, maybe the number of bugs you resolved. It could be the amount of codes which were created efficiently, right? You probably solved some, created efficient code and has some metrics to measure it. Maybe it could be user engagement data. Maybe it could be the number of people who looked at that app. There's just a lot of metrics you can use. Think hard. If any, I've also probably worked with students like you. I've gone to different institutes and given direct feedback to students. By the way, guys, if any one of you have a resume, you want to discuss your resume with me after the end of this session, I'm happy to open it up. Okay, so feel free to share your resume. I'm happy to give you feedback if you have your resume with you. But every bullet point needs to have a metric at the end of the day. Okay. If you develop, say, a Google Analytics dashboard, right, you have to attach a metric to it. So this resume is not perfect because it talks about social media followers without giving numbers. Let's look at some of the other work. So talks about deploying a softmax regression model. So this is a very technical term. Looking at this, I can understand that this person has done some good work. They talk about a metric attached to it saying decrease wastage by 10%, cost savings of 15 lakhs. So there has to be a metric to a bullet point. If you think very hard and you say that I cannot identify a metric, then maybe don't put it as a bullet point. You will appear very powerful if you attach a number to each one of these bullet points. So this is all about work experience. I've heard some MTech students come to me and say that they don't have the chance to have done an internship in industry during the end of the first year. So what should they do? What I highly recommend to them is it is not always about industrial work experience, but even if you do some research experience as part of your coursework, or if you do some projects with professors, put it there. It's very helpful. In this case, right, I mean, I pulled up an example of like somebody working with a professor, did some analysis work, talked about reducing processing cycle times, talked about reducing overall process costs. So again, add metrics. This is again not a perfect metric because there's no number attached to it, but you have to add some numbers. So if you present it from this framework, it can look very good. Now, when it comes to people skills, you can also do other things like you can add your volunteer experience. And again, you do the same thing, right? You led a team, you supervised a project for 200 low-income families. This is a big deal. You may think volunteer work is all nonsense. No, it's not true. Volunteer work can mean a lot if framed the right way. In this case, if you led a team of 10 members, you improve the efficiency of the existing process by 20%. Even a recruiter from BCG or McKinsey will take this seriously. They would like to know more because they'd be curious to see what did you do during this volunteer work to improve your efficiency by 20%. So again, these are easy ways by which you can get more attention to your resume. I would highly recommend that you not spend too much time on your hobbies and other things, because I'm mainly looking to see, are you a match for my job description? Are you a match for the skills as defined in the job description? So you can go off on a tangent. You can talk about climbing Mount Everest, Mount Kilimanjaro and all that. That's all great, but it really doesn't mean much. Again, I know there are exceptions like companies like consulting companies where if you have got a very good position of responsibility, it definitely helps you in the internship search process or job search process. But ideally, outside the consulting world, it may not really account to much. Okay. So these are examples of action verbs. I'm going to share these slides with everyone. So Ms. Rajeshwari is going to share the slides with you as we finish this session. But try to, when you have a resume in front of you, try to change your resume by using these words as defined here. This will make your resume look a lot more powerful. It will also make it look as we've done lots and lots of work. So it's a shortcut to creating an impressive resume. Okay, let me maybe pivot a little bit. We've probably got like 10, 15 minutes. Talk about again, it's checklist of things which HR looks for. And for me, I don't even need to read these things because this is automatically flowing in my mind when I look at a resume. First thing first, spelling mistake, grammatical errors. No way. You cannot have spelling error on your resume, right? Like if you have spelling error, even I've seen this even happen to very senior people, like people applying for jobs like a senior director, VP, they tend to have mistakes. Like even an entry level fresher cannot have these mistakes, let alone senior people. So please do a bunch of things. Use Microsoft Word to do a spell check. Number one thing you have to be doing. The number two thing you can do is Grammarly. Have you guys heard of the Grammarly app? There's an option to actually do a check. They'll give you a lot of errors and they'll flag errors to you. So use Grammarly to spot errors. That's the point number two. Point number three is there's also mistakes which an automated program like Word or Grammarly cannot catch. So go to some person like a professor or somebody who is like an English language teacher in your neighborhood. Talk to them, maybe use your friend circle, maybe your neighbor, right? Talk to them, get some feedback. I think it's very important for somebody to read your resume and give you feedback in terms of does it make sense or not. Please make sure that your email is listed at the top of the resume, your phone number, the details are mentioned. Do not have unprofessional email ID. So I've seen examples of like crazycat at hotmail.com or like a coolcat at something, right, at ymail.com. So there are two reasons why it's bad. Firstly, use your name. Don't use crazycat, coolcat. This is not a way to have an email ID. Like you want to look professional, so don't be unprofessional. Second thing I'm asking is, hey man, in this world you should be using Gmail. You should not be using like Ymail or Proton Mail and all that, right? So again, that's if you're using Proton Mail, I'm a little confused. I'm like you're probably caught in a time warp. 20 years back, it was okay to use Proton Mail, but maybe not now. So again, just be aware of the impression you're sending about yourself to the world outside. Never disclose things like your age, gender, totally unnecessary. In the US, these are all protected fields, which means that no company should be asking these questions. And if they ask the question, you can the person being interviewed, right, can take you to court. They can file a court case. Since many of the companies in India are also from the US, the US-based MNCs, the same tradition lingers that they do not typically expect any sort of picture, age, gender, personal information, and so on. Don't use the word I on your resume. We talked about it. Do not use passive language. Try to always say there's something called action. When you're talking about a sentence, instead of using passive tense, you can use active tense and just do some homework in terms of what I'm trying to talk about. Do some homework in terms of how you want to present yourself. Typically, Indians tend to use passive tense when we talk. And when you switch to a resume, it's better to use active tense. Okay, so just reorganize your resume on this format. Make it easy to skim. So if I, for example, see something like too many fonts, I don't like it. I basically want the resume to have minimal fonts in terms of you want to use one or two formats and that's it. You want to have maybe not more than two different fonts on your resume. Try to stick to as minimum fonts as possible and make sure that the left-hand side, right-hand side, they're all aligned together. It's easy to read and nothing is out of place. Like when I look at a resume, right, the first thing is channeled is some word is not aligned, like the additional space between two words. My mind just grabs it. I'm looking for a perfect resume without mistakes. So make sure that you proofread it as much as possible. Many a times I've seen computer science students use LaTeX to create the resumes. It looks wonderful. So if you guys have the ability to use LaTeX, do use it because the resumes absolutely look fantastic, especially when you're doing your off-campus recruiting. There's no need to list your references, not required. You use the references when you're applying for higher studies, when you're trying to do your MS or PhD abroad. You don't need to list references on your job resume. We talked about using facts and figures. We talked about a resume being ready in 5 to 10 seconds. Make it easy to read. It shows up very clearly if you've done your homework because your resume will look easy and it look well prepped. Okay. Use consistent spacing, bold, italics. So don't do bold in one place, italics in one place, and so on. So use the same consistent format throughout. If there is space between two paragraphs, keep it consistent throughout. Don't make mistakes there. Try not to have abbreviations on your resume. For example, if you say you are a POC on your resume, people wonder what the hell does POC mean? It could mean point of contact, right? But you have to mention what it means. If you use something like SLA on your resume, what the hell does SLA mean, right? I mean, you have to define what that means on your resume. If you do not define, the reader is not going to understand. Remember that the person going through your resume is probably a non-technical person, is going to be a non-engineer. Most recruiters belong to the world of HR. They don't belong to the world of engineering or technology. So they don't really have too much work experience, and they are also not engineers. So make it easy for them, make their life easier, and make them your friend by listing it down properly. Also, when you list your work experience, begin with the latest information at the top and then work downwards. So that's the best way to do it. And don't go back to your school days. I highly prefer that students only talk about what they did after they joined their undergrad program. So, for example, whenever I see someone who's written like I got so and so rank in AIEEE exam, or I got so and so rank in IIT exam, I got the first place in some NTSE's like school selection exam, or I was a topper in another exam. I don't care what you did in your school. I only care about what you did in your college. Okay? So that's some easy ways by which you can create a good resume.